Dave, I got to tell you, we were traveling to the Midwest this past weekend for a very happy occasion, a wedding in the family. And I was driving through some old haunts from living in Northeast Ohio and Michigan. And one of the billboards brought a rush of memory back. And it was for a talk radio station in Akron, Ohio, that I used to listen to driving home from work. I used to work nights at the Akron Beacon Journal, and I would tune this radio station in, not because necessarily I'm a huge talk radio fan, but because they had something that when you hear about it today is going to sound like caveman time. Okay. And I want to know whether this was something that you ever had on the West Coast. It was called Dial a Date. And basically...
Dial a Date, okay, yeah.
Dial a Date, and it was basically Tinder for the radio, okay? So, if you were a
everything
young
you love
person,
about Tinder, take that away and now put it on the radio.
Yeah. And then, you know how you can see the person's face? Yeah, didn't have that. You know how you choose from a lot of people? Yeah, you didn't have that. You took it right, boiled it down to the most useless parts, and that's what we had in the 1990s. It was Dial a Date, and it was so. There was parts of it that was wonderful. I still the host, the DJ who did Dial a Date was so good. I still remember his name. His name was Jim Albright, and he had an amazing voice. He came off he had a little Charles Nelson Riley in him, in his delivery.
How wonderful for dating.
Yeah, he was a really good talker. Because what he had to do was somebody would call up that was looking for a date, right? Okay. And on the radio, he would have to make, let's say this is a guy, he'd have to make this guy sound interesting. He'd have to make somebody who's totally just some schmuck on a phone sound interesting for 5 minutes or so, enough until the people that he was looking for, in the case of argument here, let's say that it was a woman. Oh, and I think towards the end they were doing all kinds of different pairings, which again for the 1990s on the radio was kind of forward looking. But let's say that he was looking for a woman. This guy would have to come in, make this guy sound interesting. Oh, wow. Women, at least 3 women would have to call up, and then it would be like the dating game TV show, right? They would say, okay, let's have you talk to contestant number 1. And then they would talk, and the DJ would facilitate. Again, he'd have to be an amazing people person to do this. They would talk and chat back and forth. What do you like? What do you don't like? What do you like? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. Then it would go number 2, number 3. At the end, the person would choose one of them. Whoa. They would take them off the line to exchange personal information to have a date. And then they'd go on to the next. And then, of course, they would check in with people later.
I was going to say, is it like Shark Tank where you would check back in a couple weeks later and be like, how'd it go?
Yeah. You remember, Steve from last week, he paired up with Melissa, and let's hear how their date went. Well, we had a great time, but it wasn't a love match, blah, blah. But can you imagine, in today's day and age, trying to make something like Dial a Date work?
I got to tell you, for anyone under 25, 30, back then we just had to make our own fun. And it was whatever bad shit technology we had lying around, which was phones, radio, the basic VCRs. Like it was so haphazard compared to what we do now.
Well, and Dial a Date was a big step up technologically because what we had before Dial a Date were literally classified ads.
Holy shit.
Right?
Imagine trying to find the love of your life with 30 words or less, Brad.
Yeah, and especially when you're paying by the character. Think of a tweet.
Oh my God.
Think of a tweet.
My ads would have been so short.
But you're paying by the character. That's where you get that whole SWM seeks SWF. Because you had to use abbreviations, single white male, single white female, whatever you were looking for, you had an abbreviation for it. Looking for an LTR, long-term relationship. Can you tell I spent a little bit of time?
Oh my God! Hold on. I think the entire world wants to know because you were in the newspaper world and a little bit older than I was. Yes. Did you ever place a classified ad for a date, Brad?
One time. I
never would have thought to ask this had this topic not come up. Okay. Yes, please. I'm not judging in any way. A little bit. Tell me what you did.
No, listen, you remember when we were talking about our friend who was feeling a little bit ziggy?
Yeah.
And I said, listen, you gotta get to a point where you're comfortable in your own skin.
Yep.
I was so not that. I was saying that from a position of I've been there, and that's what I needed to do. And nobody was around to rattle me and tell me what and who knows if I would have had the wherewithal to do it. But I was like, I gotta go out on a date. I gotta find somebody I can talk to. This is and so I placed a classified ad. I forget what it said, but of course, one thing hasn't changed. I was cheap then. I'm cheap now. It had to be riddled with abbreviations. I'm sure I said very little, but it puts you in an interesting spot when you're paying by the character because do you choose to tell more about yourself or do you choose to say more about the type of person you're willing to meet?
Also, you could pay for placement. So I know based on Brad's cheapness, it was him and he's surrounded by plumbing companies. Just surrounded by plumbing companies.
Yeah, which actually wasn't a bad strategy because it's hard to look bad when you're surrounded by plumbing companies.
The more bonkers thing that I think a lot of people forget about is, we all make fun of, teens and 20-somethings now who almost intuitively know how to pose for social media. Cameras above your head, lighting is facing your natural light if you can, extend your chin so you don't get a double chin going. Like everybody sort of knows the tricks now. But the thing that we all forget is video dating in the 80s and 90s was bonkers. Yeah. I mean, I know that Tinder is shallow because you're going swipe, and you're getting rid of people. Yep. But think about the inefficiency of getting out the frickin' VCR tape, putting it in, fast forwarding through the legal notice, getting to Roger. Hi, I'm Roger. I'm a local middle manager and account. Nope, eject. Putting in the next tape. Fast forwarding through the legal stuff, getting to the next one. Hello, my name's Steven. I work as a zoologist for the Cleveland Local Library Association. Nope, eject. And then go to, like, how inefficient was that process? And also, nobody looked good. Nobody looked good in video dating. Nobody looked good.
And because media is so cheap now, you could take a bad video and either see that it was a bad video or get instant feedback that it's a bad video.
Right away and
then you learn everything.
Yeah.
But by the time you've shot your tape on VCR, it was like, it's too late. You've paid $200 for your recording session. You see it on your TV and you're like, oh my God, I look horrible. And there's nobody around to tell you, how to do it better. Yeah. So there wasn't the instant transfer of knowledge that we've got today.
Yeah. I mean, VCR microphones were terrible. Their resolution was 480 at best, I think. I don't remember. At best. So, no one knew how to do basic lighting around their apartment. So it was always a badly lit guy from behind. It looked like a hostage video. He's wearing horizontal stripes. No one's told him to sit upright, so he's kind of slouching. and so it's just like, oh, God, Roger, what are you doing? What is any of this doing? This is not working. Oh, God.
Yeah. You got to wonder about anybody that actually got a date, through any of that. I mean, somehow dates happen. Somehow people took those leaps of fate and found their love interest through these things. It's amazing. It actually worked before the internet came around and made everything different.
Absolutely. I mean, there are kids walking around thankful to exist because of that stuff. So it worked, I guess it worked. And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody. Welcome to ComicLab, the show about dating and making comics.
And dating and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Guigar, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, who thankfully has never been on Tinder. And I'm the cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
Not as thankful as the rest of us are, and this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. And just a reminder that my presence on Tinder would have only cost you a swipe. It wouldn't have been that big an inconvenience, Brad. It's not like the VCRs. You wouldn't have had to pop me out and rewind before you put me back on the shelf. I just want to remind everybody that this show is going out live to our ComicLab Live Gab group, and they are joining us every week at the live stream, and there is a concurrent chat every week running along with the show, and I'm waving to them now.
Oh, yeah.
And if you happen to miss the live stream show, it is archived every week if you have to miss it for life, love, or learning. So So either way, you are set up when you join us over at patreon.com/ComicLab. And Brad, this week, I think we should be real.
Oh my goodness. Is it time for us to be real? Because I'm ready to be real.
Are you ready to be real?
Well, this is you know what? I was being real just before we turned the microphones on, because
as was I for the first time.
Yeah, we found out, and by the way, this means that the rest of our audience has known about this for months. But Dave and I,
when two dudes that are our age are like, "Oh, be real, time to try it," that means all the kids are immediately getting off. That's what it is.
So in case you haven't sussed it out by now, we're talking about BeReal, the new social media platform. And the concept is this. You sign up for BeReal, you establish your account, and then you get a notification at a random time during the day. And wherever you are, you have 2 minutes to take a photograph of whatever you're doing at that moment, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And here's the part I didn't quite understand. You know how your smartphone has a forward-facing camera and a backwards-facing camera? When you take the picture, it activates both of them at the same time. So you're taking a picture of you and you're taking a picture of whatever you're facing. I didn't understand that. I got my first one is very strange. Is that why I got the nostril photo of
Brad Guigar on my BeReal? Is that what that was?
Yes, and it was out of focus yet. You couldn't see all the hairs clearly. It was so yeah. And then once you approve that, it goes up, and only your friends see it. So there is that. You know, it doesn't go public. Only your friends see your BeReal photographs. And then it just happens once every 24 hours. So once you've done for that 24-hour period, you have to wait for the next one. And there are a lot of things about this that number one, just the fact that, Dave and I finally found out about it, so it must be popular. But I'm thinking this is the time to start experimenting with this, because I think this is going somewhere. I think this is a good time to jump on the wagon. I'm not sure why yet.
Yeah. Well, let's lay this out for people. Because there are no filters, because you can't super duper plan your shots, because you either cheat and take a good forward facing photo, or you cheat and take a good backward facing photo, and then the other one's kind of shitty depending on which way you cheat. So because we all know you can only pay attention so much to how you stage it, and you only have 2 minutes, so you can't super duper prep. Although we'll talk about that in a minute in terms of what a big chain did recently. And again, no filters, no sort of cleaning up the photo, no sort of redoing the lighting or any of the staging. And I have to say, as part of a broader trend of what we've been talking about, which is that social media is kind of failing cartoonists, it's also failing users, if you think about it. And so one of the reasons why I think BeReal is skyrocketing in popularity with teens and with 20-somethings. I mean, Brad, the downloads have been bonkers. I think it's somewhere in the 40 to 50 million range now. It might even be higher, because it's kind of on an exponential curve right now. And as Brad jokingly said, when Brad and I find out about it, that lets you know that it's already reached a saturation point. But here's the thing, though. I'm being serious about this, quite serious about this, is that Instagram is failing us. TikTok is failing us. Facebook is failing us. Twitter is failing us. Because we're all presenting a super hyper curated version of our lives to the world, and we sense the phoniness, and we also sense how it makes us feel about ourselves. A little bit of like public jealousy of like, well, I guess Brad has a good life. Dang, I wish Dave Kellett could have a good life like that. Look at how Brad looks so great in all those photos with his bow tie and looking so fancy. And, but it's true though. It's true. We've had 10 years of it now, and we all kind of sense that the phoniness is not working for us. So I'm one of the reasons why I wanted to bring BeReal up on the show today is I think there is potential value for cartoonists on BeReal. I'm not 100% certain that it can be made to be a marketing engine for us. And that's okay. Although I think my sense is Brad's going to have a different opinion on that. But I have to say, as a human, I kind of like this idea as a social network. And it might be the first social network that I do in, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years, where it's just for my friends and I, you know what I mean? Like maybe I don't bring it public. Maybe it's just us, just because I personally am tired of the sort of faux presentation of people's lives,
And that's everything you need to know. Everything that you just said is why I think it's a good idea to spend a little bit of time getting in on the ground floor of this one, because everything you said was right. And also, there's two other things I'm going to add to that. And number one, TikTok is already running scared. If you've been on TikTok and you see that they want you to do this thing, post a video at the same time as your friends, right? That's BeReal. That's exactly what BeReal is trying to do. Yes. So when TikTok is running scared, and TikTok has been running the board for the last couple of years, when TikTok is running scared, you know that they've got something, and their metrics are telling them that this is a threat. Number two, this is the first social media that has actually sounded fun to me for a long time. Yeah. Because, again, it takes all the gloss off. There's not that comparing my highlight reel to somebody else's blooper reel or vice versa. It sounds like fun. And so there's a little bit of trouble. You know, that it's just not, it won't be another month until we find out that somebody caused a traffic accident because they were taking their BeReal shot as they were supposed to be paying attention in traffic. Yeah. That's going to happen without a doubt, or somebody's going to, walk off a cliff, all that stuff that they used to talk about with TikTok and social media in general. It's going to be a whole new wave of that kind of hysteria. But, I think this has legs. I think this is going to really get interesting. And that's why it's important for people like us to be in on the ground floor, because even though we don't know what the play is yet, I think this is where the play is going to be made.
And because here's another wrinkle to it. I don't yet know how BeReal is going to market user-specific advertising yet in a way that to a user base that doesn't reveal as much curated information about themselves as TikTok or Instagram do. Maybe as the network grows, obviously it'll become more information-based. Where I guess what I'm saying, Brad, is a lot of advertisers have been able to reach us based on the things that we reveal about ourselves, what we click, how we follow, right? I don't sense that this one is going to be as widespread a network effect, because there are going to be, I think, a higher than usual percentage of people that keep their circles smaller, if that makes sense. Yep. Although maybe this is me just projecting because I want to keep my circle smaller and BeReal. But I can see why, because this feels like the old internet. It feels like what we grew up on, like original Twitter or the vines that we would make that were stupid and were 7 or 14 seconds or whatever the hell they were. And our old blog posts, they were all a little bit, we used to joke that social media was what you had for lunch. And it kind of got hyper curated and everyone got away from that. And then it was like the most posed photo with 20 filters on yourself. And so in going back to the old internet with BeReal, people have to let their guard down a little bit. And so I think we're going to have people set up a lot of BeReal accounts without public settings. It's just going to be kept private, walled gardens. Because discovery is fun. And if you go on to BeReal and do the discovery setting and just see where people, you'll see snippets of someone having a coffee in a stone thing in Israel. And then you'll flip and and suddenly you're in North Africa. And then suddenly you're in, a school in France. And it's kind of fun to see as you jump around the world, basically real life snippets of someone's life. There's something pleasantly voyeuristic about it, not creepily voyeuristic, pleasant. And there's a certain joy to that, but I don't know that I would want to put myself yet in the publicly discoverable aspect of it. And maybe that's just because I don't know how to not take a photo of a double chin when I'm doing a forward-facing camera. I don't know how to do it. Listen, maybe I need someone to instruct me on that. I can't get a room and not get a double chin. Maybe I need to lay off the in and out. I don't know, but that's just me. How about you? Can you see yourself making this publicly discoverable for you?
Yes, for the same reason. I think a lot of people are, because you're going to be positively reinforced for doing that, because the more you extend your circle, the more people having a coffee in Israel and the more people doing, a brake job on their car in the backyard, the more of that you're going to get exposed to. Yeah. And also you're going to get bored of those same people and those same faces every time. You're going to want different people, different faces, different experiences, and you're going to get positively enforced for widening your circle. And this is going to do a couple of things. Number one, the first thing people are going to point out is that just like Instagram, and we often speak in dour tones about Instagram, for good reason. But just like Instagram, just like TikTok, I already tried to put a hyperlink in my profile. Nothing doing. Right? That ain't happening. That's our first place I went. Not doesn't mean that it won't happen later, but I'm not holding my breath. But it's doing what social media first set out to do, which is connect people. And let's face it, that's as content creators on the web, that's a big part of what we trade on, is that personal connection. That's going to start to happen in real big ways on BeReal. Again, it remains to be seen how we're going to use that. But I think this is where those connections are going to be made in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I both agree and I disagree with you in that. And again, going back to advertising, I feel like this is going to be the big structural problem for BeReal is how do brands market on it? And I think the answer is going to be humor. I think humor is going to end up being the big marketing angle.
Yeah.
You probably saw, Brad, or maybe you didn't see, but it was either Chipotle or Subway or somebody sent a team of 20-year-olds to Times Square, New York. They bought advertisement in Times Square. They had them waiting around with the official phone of the restaurant.
Oh, really?
Waiting for the notification from BeReal to stage the photo, right? They spent money on this. Granted, they hired a bunch of 20-year-olds who don't cost a lot, but they had to get the setting, they had to get the Times Square, they had to get all that. And it worked. Like it had kind of a splash on BeReal. But I think we are going to see a lot of that kind of staged marketing. Where companies are going to have one 20-year-old in the, the Flamin' Hot Cheetos room, and they're going to have a staged room in the thing, or they're going to put a costumed character doing stuff, something that's cheap with a 20-year-old or 21-year-old. They can pay them hourly, you know what I mean? And they just have them waiting around for the BeReal to be notified. But aside from that, you can't do the super staged marketing. So I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is I don't know how a cartoonist makes this work for them in a way that's not hyper revealing of their own life anyway. For those of us that like a modicum of privacy, you know, we all pull back the curtain a little bit, but we all like a little bit of privacy. And the problem with BeReal is that there's just times a day you don't want to take a photo. You don't want, and it's not going to be focused on your work anyway. So I don't know. I don't necessarily know how that helps the overall career.
For corporations, I think you just stumbled right across it. You got a costume character. You can hire a team of 30 20-year-olds. As long as they put the costume on, you don't know who's inside the costume.
Right.
And you've got complete coverage at that point.
Yep.
So that makes really good sense. Here's another thing that I think this is going to become very popular because of this next thing. And that is the fact that we're going to start to take some of the gloss off of social media. And I think in terms, we hear all the time how social media is kind of bad for mental health because we're comparing, ourselves to these people who look beautiful and seem to be living the perfect lives. That's going to be impossible with BeReal, quite frankly, for regular people, even for irregular people, you cannot be camera ready 24 hours a day. It's just inhuman.
Yeah.
So I think that, and I think by participating in that and saying, hey, this is me on the treadmill at 7:30 in the morning. I look horrible, but this is what I'm doing. You're going to start to feel a much greater connection to these people. And then my guess is when you put like that, or just say, hey, I'm the cartoonist, I do Evil Inc., they're going to be more apt to search you out one way or another. Even if there's not a hyperlink, I think the motivation is going to be stronger to make that connection with you because you're an actual real person and you're sharing that degree. I'll tell you what, there's going to be a little bit of, especially for those of us with families, all right? The trade-off on that is you're going to have to be a little bit extra careful when you're taking these pictures because there's going to be people on the other side of that camera who don't want to be on your flip side and you've got to be respectful of that. Even if you're in a public place, like in a Starbucks, my guess is you're going to have to be very careful how you're swinging that camera around, because if I'm standing on the other side of you, I don't want to be on your B side.
BeReal, yeah, exactly.
I don't want to be on the B side of that. So, but I do think that it has the potential to be a lot more powerful than even we're getting the feel for right now.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't know what the play is, but I think this is where the play is going to be made.
I got to tell you, a lot of the energy of this conversation is reminding me of the chat that you, Scott, Chris, and I had around Twitter when you guys were trying to convince me to do Twitter. And I was like, I don't want to write all this bullshit all every day. And 9 years ago, we knew there was something there. You three more than I. And it was about trying to figure out how to use it. I will say, I agree with you that there's energy, there's excitement, there's interest in this new, drop the filters look at your life. But I'm going to disagree with you that I think your temporary excitement is fooling you right now, that this is going to lead people to seek out your art. In the same way that a lot of people fool themselves that, like, well, look, I've got 80,000 people on Instagram. They're going to hunt me down. They're going to find my Kickstarter or find my store. We've seen that. If you can't link out, it doesn't do shit for you. You know what I mean? It's like, it's real nice to have 40,000 followers on BeReal. If you can't link out, it doesn't do shit for you. They're not going to go seek you out. They're not going to leave that platform. We've seen it on Instagram. We've seen it on Facebook when you can't get the ads out. And eventually we know that their algorithm on BeReal is going to start to govern it based on, once you're having publicly facing things and you have followers of 40,000, they're going to limit it. The algorithm's going to kick back in again. Like right now, we're excited because it doesn't feel very algorithm-y. You know what I mean?
But that algorithm is coming.
It's coming. Yeah, we know it's coming because they're going to have to. This is what I'm getting circle back around on ads again. They're going to have to figure out a way to keep you on BeReal because they need to sell you ads. And if we're only doing it once a day, I don't know how they're going to do that without really pushing their discovery aspect of BeReal, which in turn will then trigger a whole bunch of algorithms to give you what you previously have liked. Oh, you like people having coffee in stone patios? Great. Then you're going to get a lot more of that. Oh, you like people redoing the house? You're going to get a lot more of that. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's got the shiny new car smell right now. And I feel like 6 months in, 12 months in, we're going to go, well, I built up a BeReal audience and I can't do anything with it like we did with Instagram, and TikTok before that. And I'm on the right. Listen, I'm an open book here is in terms of like you saying my enthusiasm might be blinding me. Go back and listen to those first couple of episodes of ComicLab where we were discovering TikTok. I was very, very bullish on TikTok. Yeah. I don't know when the last time I uploaded anything to TikTok was because I got very discouraged with that very quickly. And I realized there's no ROI. And so I got the hell out. But I'm going to say this. How much, if you could go back in time and jump in on, and by the way, I hate Instagram. So take this and really understand that through this filter. As much as I hate Instagram for its uselessness, and it's useless, how much would you love to go back and get in on the ground floor of Instagram back when people like Chris Hallback were saying, hey, get on the ground floor of this? How much would you love to go back and get on the ground floor of that? So that you could be in a much different position with Instagram today. I kind of feel like it's no. You know why? You know why that's useless? That's like that old joke of like, yeah, Brad, I lose 10 cents on every volume or every unit that I sell, but I make it up on volume. If 10,000 followers are useless on Instagram, 400,000 followers are still useless. Yes, you can sell ads, and yes, maybe Instagram is throwing you some cash, but the network is still useless in general for you because you can't link out, you can't control it, you don't own that user base. And the algorithm is limiting you. So I take your broad point that wouldn't it be nice, but you would still find it to be broadly useless for your career. And to your point too, as far as TikTok,
Yeah.
Fast, rapid, exponential growth on BeReal doesn't necessarily mean you have to get on it anyway, because let's all remember that fast, rapid, exponential growth also happened to Clubhouse not 12 months ago, was it? 18 months ago? Who the hell? What was the last time you heard about Clubhouse anywhere, anything, anywhere? No, that thing dried up faster than a pioneer ghost town. It's just a tumbleweed blowing by in Clubhouse. And who knows, that might be what BeReal ends up being. But I will say I'm going to take off my cartoonist hat and put on my normal human being hat. I still think I might like BeReal for a limited group of 15, 45, 100 people in my life that I would love to see what's going on in their daily thing. And I would love to show them what stupid things I get up to, you know?
I got to tell you, I still think that there's a little something there that's worth exploring. Number one, I'm probably going to do it at least for the next couple of weeks, just because it sounds like fun.
Yeah, it does sound like fun. It does. It sounds like the old internet.
Yeah, I don't know when the last time I said that this social media platform sounds like fun.
Yeah.
This actually sounds like fun. But take a look at what Chipotle is doing right now. Their outreach, they were very quick to jump on BeReal, and their outreach involves a QR code on the other side camera. So on one side, it's the main subject. On the other side, they really quick set up a QR code, like that's probably printed out on a card. Now, once you got a QR code, you can do anything.
Yeah,
that's a link.
Okay, yes, but okay, the average teen, 20-something, 30-year-old, it's not like they've got a spare iPhone to take a photo of their QR code on their other phone. What I'm getting at is you still, in your heart of hearts, you still know that's a circumlocuitous way to like try to reach somebody. You got to get out a second GD device, hold it up to the first device, get the QR code to scan.
If BeReal gets enough people doing something like this, technology will solve that problem about having the second phone. It'll be something that you can put in, save into your photos and then just select it. This is an easy problem to solve, and technology will have it solved within months if there's a there.
Right. Well, and one last thing to mention before we move on. Obviously, have fun with it, explore. And two things I really want to say about BeReal before we close up the shop. One is definitely bring this over to the Discord chat on the patreon.com/ComicLab, because this is a great place to workshop ideas on how cartoonists might be able to use it. Who knows, when I go to bed tonight, suddenly I might get a light bulb moment and go, oh, here's how I could use BeReal in my cartooning. And I'm sure someone else in the group might have an idea. So definitely bring it over to the Discord chat. Secondly, I should just mention, because this is interesting going forward, as it will be a limiter for TikTok as the US government and the EU kicks in, is that the servers for BeReal are in France and the US versus in China. And for those that think that doesn't matter, we see from Russia recently that having an autocratic system in control of servers is not the best thing in the world. And so I'd much rather have my data on a French server or on an American server than I would with something that the Communist Party could conceivably audit when they need to. So I think that will impact the growth of it if TikTok ends up getting limited by the US government or the EU in the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah. I think this is going to be interesting. I absolutely think that this is something that we're going to be talking about a whole lot more. And the idea of bringing it to Discord is really smart, because let's face it, Dave, we've got a lot of really smart listeners. Yeah. And once we get the ComicLab community on this, I think we're going to start batting around a lot of really innovative ways that we can make this work.
So, pals, let's wisdom of crowds this baby and bring it over to the Discord chat over at patreon.com/ComicLab. If you haven't joined us, jump in, because this is going to be a good conversation. I guarantee it.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Dave, it's time for that mid-show update, and boy, oh boy, do we have a great one. We got to remind people to come out and join us on Saturday, November 12th at 2 o'clock at the Charles Schulz Museum. They're going to be celebrating what would have been the legendary cartoonist's 100th birthday that weekend, and they want us to come out and basically do a live version of the podcast in which we talk about Schulz, his life, his relevance to comics even today. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you it's going to be a rollicking conversation. And partly because I know we've got a lot of ComicLab community members that are already making plans to come out and join us. So it's not only is it going to be a great live podcast, it's going to be a little reunion. It's going to be a mini ComicLab con that's going on. That, well, I don't want to say it's a con, like a convention. And it's going to be one of the few places you can get your ComicLab pin, because we only give those out at live appearances. We've got a great gold pin that says "Let's Talk Comics." You can get it only one place, and that's where either Dave or I show up in person. Since I don't leave the house very often, this is going to be a great opportunity on November 12th in Santa Rosa, California.
Santa Rosa, California.
Yeah, it's gonna. You can see us doing the show live, and you do have to pay. You get in with museum admission, so you will have to pay museum admission when you get there. But other than that, you get to just pull up a chair, watch Dave and I work our magic the way.
Look at us work our magic.
You can see us talk good, and you can see what these live stream folks get to see every week is Dave and I being brilliant together.
And after our panel, there's going to be another all-star panel with Al Roker, Stefan Pastis, I think Lynn Johnston, Patrick McDonald. Kathy Geiswett, I think. I don't have it in front of me, but anyway, there's 5 or 6 cartoonists you'll know right off the bat. World-class cartoonists, and it's going to be great to see them again. By the way, and Brad and I are both flying into Oakland, so I've got to get out my Rolodex, Brad, and see if there's anybody I still know at Pixar, so that we can swing by and get you a tour, because it's a cool campus to look at if you've never seen it before. Steve Jobs designed the main building.
No, I did not know that.
He designed it for casual interactions, so that people that are in departments that don't necessarily work with each other would casually bump into one another and have to work with one another, have to get ideas in general. It's a fun building. I have to say, like the 1 or 2 times I've been up there, I've always been impressed by Pixar. So I got to get out the old Rolodex and see if we know anybody there.
Speaking of BeReal, we're going to have to also be real on our 1-hour road trip from Oakland into Santa Rosa. I think we got to live stream some of that, right?
Oh my goodness.
While we're driving into Santa Rosa,
that would be fun.
We should be sharing that trip with some folks. Because having just got back from driving to Michigan and back, my wife tells me I'm a delight to drive with.
Oh, yeah. I got to tell you, the 1 or 2 times I've driven with Brad, if you like to see the embodiment of human anger, it's fun to drive with Brad. Like, do you guys remember in Inside Out, the small red character whose flames literally shot out from the top of his head? That's what it's like to drive with Brad Geiger. So I'm very excited to get in this rental car and see the sort of zen approach to life that is Brad Geiger on the road. I will also say, though, that for those that do come out and join us at the Schulz Museum, and gosh, I hope you do, because it's going to be super fun, we're also going to try to do a group walk around the museum where we'll get a docent to sort of guide us around. We may all go out for a beer at a beer garden, or Brad will get some box wine. It's going to be a dang delight, so please do join us, and I think it's going to be a really fun one.
Absolutely. So, Dave, we ran out of time on our BeReal conversation, but we had a couple more things we wanted to talk about before we went to our next topic. Oh, and what did that include? Well,
I want to say, first and foremost, it really speaks to the fact that we didn't put this right up front, is that we are 2 older, straight white dudes. And that's a very different thing in terms of putting yourself out there in terms of marketing for your comic than for a lot of people whose very existence sometimes can be weaponized against them, you know?
Yeah.
And so obviously, I don't know why we didn't say this right up front, is that it's not for everyone, in the sense that the world can be a shitty place for certain people. And it speaks to where we come from in terms of a place of privilege, that we didn't even think of this right off the bat. But there's that. And there's also, Brad, I think, a security aspect to this, don't you think, with BeReal, that we just got to be conscious of.
Because I mean, listen, what's going to happen the first few, if you decide to participate in this, first few times you do it, you're going to be very, very conscious of what that image is going to be that isn't your face, right? I keep calling it the B side, like it's a 45. I'm sure there's better terminology or accepted terminology that's going to come out of all this, but we're going to be very careful about the first few. But what's going to happen is that law of decreasing intentions is going to come across, and pretty soon after the dozenth or the 3,000th or the 100th BeReal shot, you're going to stop paying so much attention to those that other side photo, and there's going to be stuff that you're going to wish hadn't gone out there. Like I'm just to make a ridiculous suggestion. You're working on filling out a form that involves you writing in your social security number, right? And that happens to be out on the table when your notification goes off. You snap it real quick. It's the 200th time you've done it. You don't pay any attention. It goes up. And now your social security number is out there, right? There's going to be, and all kinds of other things like I think we touched upon just a little bit in the first half, but if you take enough photos around the house, it's going to start to be a little bit easy to figure out where you are. And do you want that, right? Because you're going to see the house across the street through the window. You're going to see the back deck, out back. And certain, or if you're out in the yard mowing the lawn, you're going to see what the front of your house looks like. This is a security situation that you need to be very, very in tune. If you're going to participate, you're going to have to keep vigilant on what you're sharing about your surroundings.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, people can, especially fans and super fans, can reverse engineer a lot about your life that you didn't even think they could, based on, who knows, background of a photo, medications you might have on a counter, based on things that are seen through the window, like Brad said, based on the geotagging, if you have that turned on, I hope you don't, based on the fact that a lot of people are able to sort of reverse engineer from Zillow photos or apartment listings or condo listings where this thing might be, or the building might be. So anyway, all of that to say is it's just something to keep in mind if you're taking photos recurringly in your own space, is that there is a not zero amount of danger to that you just got to be conscious of.
Yeah, absolutely. So take that into consideration, and you're gonna have to make your own decision. Go ahead.
And that's why I say, for a lot of reasons, one of the reasons we're both excited about this is it just seems fun. And so I go back to this. I'm tempering my own excitement for this as a marketing thing, and probably becoming the first social media thing that I do for me in 8 or 10 years, not for my business, but for me, Yeah. And so, I know there's a lot of people out there that either have a private Twitter or a fake Insta or all that sort of stuff. I have never done that. And I think this one might be the first one where I'm just like, no, you know what? This one's just for me. I'm just going to share it with my 30, 40 people in my life, and that's it.
Interesting. No, I think that's a really good way to end this topic, and move on. Now, Dave, we've got a question from one of our Patreon backers, and this is a really topic that I'm really interested to get your take on. Tom writes, I know that good writing can save a comic with bad art. Please, people tell me they enjoy my writing, but I'm pretty sure people mostly read my not safe for work comics for the eye candy. Unfortunately, the pages take 5 or 6 hours to go from a sketched page to a finished page. I would love to knock the render quality of my art down a notch to speed up production, but I'm concerned leaving out a shading or a lighting pass will make the comic less appealing to readers. Do you feel it's a risk worth experimenting with?
Ooh, the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
The longer answer is, I really do feel like the art is not as critical as you think it might be in your heart of hearts. And I'll tell you what I mean. Inarguably, one of the best comic artists to ever live, Mobius. You look at a Mobius page, it's gorgeous. Holy shit, how did Mobius, how were they able to draw like that, right? Oh, God, look at this Mobius page. Brad, when was the last time you flipped open a Mobius story to enjoy the story? It just...
Never.
No, I mean, if we're all honest about it, we all go, holy shit, Mobius could draw. You go to read a Mobius story, and you're like, what is going on here? This is weird. Boy, drugs were a thing, I guess. I don't know what's going on here. Yet, you can have incredibly engaging stories in a Peanuts or in a I'm just trying to think of like the more basic iconographic type of comic strips that we had that captivated you as a kid or captivated you as an adult. And the art level is 40 notches down below what Mobius was working at, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a long way to say, I think you can absolutely experiment with just nudging down your workload, not necessarily your quality level, keep that in mind, but your workload level. And what I mean by that is, I don't even need to know who you are, but if you're doing a lot of shading, it's probably 4 different passes of shading. So first I'll do foreground characters, and then with a different type of shading, I'll do backgrounds, and then I'll do far backgrounds, mountains in the backgrounds, details of that stuff. You can, as an artist, you sort of experiment with, how would it look if I just shade the foreground characters? Everything else is flat. Or if I just do 10% of the shading that I normally would do on any, you do key objects, key people, key sets in the background, and slowly but surely you figure out a wiggle room. I went too far in reducing on that one. I need a little bit more detail. So you nudge it back up again. And there's sort of a dance that you do for a couple of months trying to figure out where it can go. But in the process, you're reducing your overall workload.
Absolutely. And with not safe for work art, unquestionably, the art is a little bit more important than it is in some other comparable types, some other types of comics. In other words, it is more important. It's unquestionable that it's more important. People are much more.
There's a reason why you don't see the XKCD and SFW. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it would be pointless, right? But
or maybe all points. Who knows?
Or pointillism. But it's something. It doesn't tip the scales so far that you can kind of ignore that whole thing. Right. So what I want to tell you is, number one, take the not safe for work stuff out of it, because really this comes down to some fundamental truths that we always talk about here on the show, and that is this: your objective is to do something that enables you to do frequent, consistent, and significant. There's those 3 words again that we keep saying. So if you are doing a level of rendering that is keeping you from being frequent, consistent, and significant, then you need to dial that back a little bit. Right. And without worrying too much that you're going to lose people, because, again, the writing and the concepts are going to be what's really drawing people there. So I'm going to encourage you, especially if your gut is telling you that you'd love to be able to put out more pages and it's taking you too long to do one page. I'm going to encourage you to start dialing that back a little bit so that you can up that frequent, consistent, significant ratio, and then keep a real close eye on how your readers are responding to that. They just might surprise you. Number one, here's the thing: you got to be very careful. Do not call attention to the change. Whatever you do, whatever you say, do not say, "Hey, everybody, I'm experimenting with a new art style. Tell me what you think." Don't say that, because readers hate change of any kind. Again, go back to when I first added color to Evil Ink. People wrote me and told me they preferred it black and white. Readers hate change. So what you don't do is call attention to the change. You put that change out there and then stay as quiet as you can, and then listen. If people start picking up on it and saying, "Oh, I liked it better before and I can't put my finger on it," or something like that. Again, never listen to one reader. Always listens to your readers, but never one reader. But start listening for that. If you start to hear that from enough people, well, then you've got to make another course correction, right? Yeah. But put that change out and do it in increments, right? For example, if you were so organized as to say, well, I can do this 6-hour page in 5 hours instead, right? Well, then try it at 5.5 hours or 5 hours, right? And then try maybe 4.5 hours. Do you see where I'm going here?
Yes.
And then you're going to slowly find a sweet spot where you're still doing the work that you're proud of. It's not taking you as long, and your readers are none the wiser.
Have you ever heard that phrase, Brad? And I'm going to mangle the phrase, but it's something like a goldfish will grow to fill the bowl you give it,
That's exactly the phrase.
And I see this sometimes in my own drawing where if I'm drawing a thing, I've got a sketchbook on my lap. Yeah. And normally I would go, all right, that drawing is done. I feel good about that. It gets the point across. I like what I did there. That's good. Okay, now take that exact same sketch, exact same Dave, exact same pen, and put me in a doctor's office where I'm waiting for another hour, or an airport where I'm waiting for another hour. I've got nothing else to do, so I just keep fiddling with the drawing. A little bit more shading. Here's another tree in the background that was unnecessary. Here's the interesting thing: the drawing doesn't necessarily get better. I'm just filling my time like that fish in the bowl. I'm growing the drawing to fill the time that I have, but I'm not necessarily making the drawing better. And what I'm getting at with that is that you have to train your eye to go, no, this drawing is done. This is enough. This is enough plus 10% for excitement and pleasure and all that sort of stuff. So that the reader goes, yep, this gets the communication across, and it also was fun. And then that's when you stop. And again, that takes some wiggle room of experimentation. Sometimes you're gonna go too far in one direction, both ways, and then you'll have to course correct back. And it's not the same for everybody, which is why Brad and I can't give you a tone specific, like, yes, you need to cut it, stop doing shading, stop doing special colorization, stop doing textures. It varies for anyone. But I will say, to Brad's point about frequent, consistent, and significant, there is a web cartoonist, and there's no need to name names. They are among the best in terms of art, amazing art.
Oh, thank you.
But I have to tell you, they have become, it is almost a point of troublesome concern that they spend no, this is not you, Brad.
Okay, I was going to say, I jumped in too soon.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, they've spent so much time making each installment perfect in whatever definition of, quote, perfect is in their mind, that it's not frequent and it's not consistent, so much to the point where Dave Kellett, for vast quantities of time, will forget that they exist. And that's not what you want. I'm not saying that they can't strive towards their own definition of perfection, but you still have to have that. Like Brad said, there's a ratio, and it's going to be different from everybody, but you still have to have frequent and you still have to have consistent in there, or else people like me who genuinely love their work kind of forget about them over 6 months, 10 months, 12 months, And
then imagine what happens for the people that don't necessarily love them, but kind of like them. And then they're not going to remember them. So it goes back to that old art school axiom, perfect is the enemy of done. Yeah. That's the same thing, is that you're spending so much time trying to achieve perfect. Maybe it's taking you too long to get done. And maybe you got to be okay with a little bit lower version of perfect. Right?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because it sounds like we're saying produce crappier work when we say drop your standards a little bit, but we're not saying that. We're saying, your skills will get better in time, so you'll get faster at what you're doing, but also the realization that not every tiny little pixel has to be in the perfect place, And so, again, it's just a course correction, but it is worth experimenting with, to answer your question.
Absolutely. So, Dave, we've got another question from one of our Patreon backers, and it goes like this. Hey, guys, my comic has a bit of an identity problem. It's an anthology series. Each chapter has a new cast. I get to cover a lot of different situations this way without having to explain how the characters got into things, but it makes it hard to say what or who my comic is about. The anthology angle lets me use a bunch of different characters, which is a big part of my comic's appeal. But I find not having a real central cast makes it hard to actually describe it to new readers. Should I steer towards a more centralized cast?
Oh, wow. This is a fun question. So my immediate response is, in terms of media that's being produced today, this feels like American Horror Story, where every season is roughly under the umbrella of horror, but it's a different cast, or even the same cast, but recast in very different roles. So if Brad Guigar was an actor, he's playing the town mayor last season. This season, he's playing a college professor, whatever it is. And I can think of a lot of shows, especially in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that had sort of, you'd had Twilight Zone, you had Fantasy Island, a new story every week. But how to tie them together, though, Brad? How to tie those together? What do you think?
Well, it's funny that you go to horror because I immediately went to horror because I think this is what the answer is. EC Comics had a number of anthology type books, and they all had one thing that kept a through line throughout, and they were basically they had a host. Remember, Tales from the Crypt had the Crypt Keeper.
Brad. Okay? Yes, Brad. Right? Sorry, I got very excited about that. Yes.
and the Vault of Horror had the Vault Keeper. The Haunt of Fear had the Old
Wait, I'm sorry,
Witch.
time out. There was a title called The Vault of Horror and had the Vault Keeper. God damn it, how is that not a ripoff of the Crypt Keeper?
Oh, well, there was the same publishing company, so it wasn't a ripoff. It was just like, listen, all of comics history can be defined by the phrase, hey, that's working, let's do that.
Brad, how dare you say that when Ant-Man and the Atom are very different characters, Brad. Very different.
Amazingly different. So and not only, and not only horror comics, let's take a look at television horror hosts, right? We had Commander USA, we had Count Scary, we
Elvira.
had Ghoulardi. So and then let's take it and go even further. You see a lot of anthology type titles that go a long way in continuity just by having a host.
Boy, you really struck gold here, because it was also true with sci-fi. The Twilight Zone, the narrator was what tied every episode together, right? You had Rod Serling, coming out with a cigarette and his attitude that made you feel like you were both safe and unsafe. That was great. But so no, I think you're right, because really, when it comes down to it, the things that tie an anthology together are the author or authors, right? Yeah. The location and the type of the media, and Brad's right, a narrator, right? The only other thing that I could think of is a very distinctive style. So, for example, Twilight Zone, they all kind of were shot in a very distinctive style, Oh, yeah. And so that tied them together. And there's no argument that you could sell an anthology that's just based on author, type of medium, and style, which is kind of what you're doing right now. Mm-hmm. But I think, to Brad's point, a centralized narration, and it doesn't have to be a narrator necessarily, but some kind of unit that ties them together. So, for example, what was the God? I'm blanking on it, but the cowboy movie that they had on Netflix. It was like 6 shorts recently. It was,
golly, I know exactly the one you're talking. Was it like Tales of?
Oh gosh, darn it! Now I'm blanking on it. Anyway,
I don't know.
And once again, for those reminding at home, you're tuning into a podcast called Two Old Guys Try to Remember Something They Watched on TV 6 months ago. Anyway,
the Ballad of
Buster Scruggs. There we go. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Anyway, the unit that Buster Scruggs used to combine all the tales was a physical book that opened in the beginning of the story. And then when that story ended, it flipped to the next page and the next title page, right? And so you have all sorts of versions of that. You could do letter collections. You could find some visual, not a narrator, but a visual that ties together all the stories. And that could be one way to do it.
Yep, absolutely. You here's, you could have a place. There was a great anthology horror series on TV. I'm going to blank on the name, but the whole idea was this antique shop had everything in the antique shop was haunted. And so then somebody would come and either buy something from the antique shop or it would escape somehow. And then the story would be, and was that one Tales from the Dark Side? Anyway, everything was haunted, and maybe they had to or they had realized that these haunted things got out, and they were trying to find them and bring them back to the antique shop. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you see the point. It could be a place of that has all these similar things, and it becomes the apex that they orbit around. Yeah, let's face it. This problem has been solved over and over and over again. What If by Marvel Comics was an anthology series? What did it have that tied all their stories around? The Watcher,
the weirdest drawn character in all of Marvel. Brad is the answer.
Yes,
a short bald guy with a giant head and a weird collar system.
Yeah. So what you need to do is realize that this problem has been solved time and time again by media, and now decide, how do you want to take that idea or that concept and make it your own? Do you want to have a host? Do you want to have a special place? Like Dave says, do you want to have a book or some kind of other hook that you can use that all of these revolve around? Once you've got that, then you've got this tying concept that unifies all of these things. And you've also, by the way, all of a sudden you've got marketing, because now you can say very clearly what this is, what the hook is. And that's the biggest hurdle for marketing. Now you can market this thing well.
You know, it really is. I'm really thankful to you and your insight on this one, Brad, because I wasn't sure when we started this question that I had a good answer. But you're right. It's got to be either a prop, a place, a person, or a narrator to really tie it together. And you're right. The branding comes from itself. Like, think of all the stories. Like, you could have the book of the Necronomicon, right? And the book is the marketing for how, you know, the physical book is the thing that markets it. So yeah, I think you're right, Brad. This is a problem that has been solved, and it's been solved in numerous ways, usually by a physical manifestation that represents all the different stories, whether it's a narrator, a person, a place, or a thing, a prop, I guess I should say, that encompasses what this is, what this concept is. And then, as Brad said, you can sell it using that.
Absolutely. So, Dave, let's end the show on a high note with one. I think we can answer this one relatively quickly, and it's right in your wheelhouse because it talked about something that you talked about on the show before. Is it time to do a
Brad,
BeReal?
I just took my BeReal. I just took my first BeReal.
I must not have the notification
What a shitty
set.
photo of myself. Oh, my God. I'm going to love how crappy the triple chins look in my photos on BeReal. This is fantastic.
Goodness.
Oh, Brad, let's see.
Okay, there's the thing. Now, so let's see if I can do this.
How did I take such a bad photo of myself?
There, I got you. Now, do I have your approval? I took the screen of you.
Brad, I don't care. We're going to use this app for 3 weeks and then be done with it.
That's a good point. So I'll send it out. Yeah. Basically, you and I are the only people on each other's BeReal at this point.
Yeah, right. My friendship group is one. That's funny that we got the notification during the show. So that's one of the weird things about the app. And both the exciting and weird thing about it is you never know where you're going to be. So I'm looking forward to Brad being in a public restroom in Philadelphia. And I'm like, well, there we go.
Oh, God. So anyway, let's end the show on another high note and cover one more question. Here it is. And Dave, you talked about giveaways, and we got a question that comes in that says, hey, I got a question about those giveaways that Dave was talking about. How do you make them beneficial? In other words, I understand how to make them legal, but what are the benefits of holding a giveaway? Does it attract more people to your comic? Does it help retain the readers or the patrons you already have? What are some of the best practices for minimizing the potential benefits for holding a giveaway? That should be maximizing. What are the best practices for maximizing the potential benefits for holding a giveaway so the value of the thing you're giving away is worth it? Dave, talk to us about the value of a giveaway.
Absolutely. So just a reminder for everybody, I do physical giveaways in my Patreon, which if you do them wrong are technically illegal. But I have somehow found a wiggle room in the presentation of it that allows me to do it. The way I do it is the post has to be public. You don't have to pay to get the giveaway. You can just have a Patreon account. And by the way, Patreon accounts are free. So you can just sign up, have a Patreon account, and not be a patron of Dave Kellett, but a follower, which is a different phrase they use of Dave Kellett. And you'll get the notification of a pop quiz that I do every week at a different time so that different people in different time zones have a good chance, right? And I give away I think the size is roughly 4x6 pencil and ink sketch of a Drive character. And I mail it at my expense to whoever the winner is. And if it's in the US, great, it cost me $1. If it's around the world, I a little bit regret doing the whole thing because it cost me $8 or whatever. So if you're in Austria, I spent some money to get that damn sketch to you. Anyway, but I give them away. And to answer your question, Jerry, about how you find them, how you make them worthwhile, there's two things that make it worthwhile. One is perceived value, and one is the actual physical excitement that happens when you open the thing. And that's true with every product that's ever been made. So I'm not necessarily cracking a new code here. It's for me, my audience loves my artwork, which is fairly obvious, or they wouldn't be patrons of my cartoon. And so giving away physical sketches of my artwork is kind of a no-brainer. Of course, the perceived value of that is high. Also, because they also know that from a perceived value standpoint, I'm eBaying a piece once every week or two that go anywhere from $100 to $400, right? And then I'm also selling my originals on Sheldon, which go for I think $170 right now. So they know that there's value. The perceived value is also true because they do sell for money, right? And I don't just give away sketches all the time. And then the actual physical excitement when you open it, I think any lover of art, when you open that, they're going to post it. They post it on Patreon. Look, it arrived. Look, I framed it up. Look, I framed it up with my other Dave Kellett art. And that, in a way, generates its own kind of excitement. And I spend roughly a day and a half once a year creating all these sketches. And then my wonderful assistant, Beth, photographs them all, puts up pop quiz questions for them to go with the comic. We preload them on the Patreon for 52 weeks, and bada bing, bada boom, we're done. It's no more work.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do, Brad. And do you think that I went wrong in my description of it, that it's a perceived value and then an actual reaction?
This is a no-brainer. It's got tons and tons of value, perceived and otherwise. And I'll just throw in that I could see it being a retention factor for patrons, because if they didn't get this giveaway, they're going to want to hang around and get the next giveaway, right? Yeah. So they're going to stick around for that. So yeah, this is slapping over with great value for your Patreon backers.
And it's to as Brad's point, it's both a retention thing, and I think it also in some degrees brings people into Patreon, because even though I don't limit it to Patreon, they're aware that being in the Patreon system makes these things in their own ecosystem. You know what I mean? They're going to see them, they're going to get them, they're going to. And what's fun is it does foster community, because the pop quiz questions oftentimes lead to joking. You know, there's all sorts of jokey answers. I chime in all the time. I try to make it fun for the answers as well. And then as far as the benefits, I also, whenever I do a drive book, which is about once every 2.5 years, I do one spread in the book that's all the best versions of these sketches from the last 2.5 years.
Oh, that's great.
Because some of them, you know, you can't, if you do 52 drawings, 4 or 5 of them are going to be really, really good. And then you grab, you know, the 5 from the next year and 5 from the year following that. You have a good spread of really fun sketches with little jokes on them that add to the overall world. So I find the benefits to be self-explanatory on this.
Oh, and I'll tell you what, we've had a good spread of comics talk and conversations just here on ComicLab, where we've been talking about comics for a nice hour. And I don't know, Dave, do you want to come back here and do this again next week?
I say we do, Brad. I'm going to be real about it, Brad, and I will be here next week with you.
I think you should. And then after we have another hour of comics talk, you're going to hear me say this. You've been listening to ComicLab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
And having tried it out, I think I'm going to make that my new laugh of the podcast when Brad makes a joke. I'm going to go, boy, is there any more annoying laugh. Your hosts have been my friend Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator and artiste of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the ComicLab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by our pal Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media. And Matt, if you want to see terrible photos of me, you can join me on BeReal.
If you love ComicLab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode like this one. This one comes in from Steffi, who says, "This is an endless fount of dad jokes and useful info. On top of being delightful, this pod is packed with great info for comic creators, both seasoned and aspiring. I look forward to it every week."
Oh, you know what's funny? I'm not even joking. That never gets old. It never gets old to hear nice things about the podcast, because I say this all the time to Bonjuros when I'm welcoming people into Patreon. You know, I send them the video pun Bonjuro to say hello. But ComicLab is literally one of the most fun things I do in my life. I'm sitting talking comics with Brad Geiger. I'm laughing. And then to have folks find, like, not only value in it, but joy in it, like that. Yeah. That's a wonderful thing. So thank you for the kind words. We really appreciate that. God, that means the world to me. I'm not even joking. It's a great lift in my shoes there for today. And then also, I want to say that if you happen to be over on Spotify, don't forget to give us a quick 5-star review. We are continuing to blow up over on Spotify. I don't know what we're doing right. We have somehow honored the algorithm gods with the right sacrifice, and they are lifting us up to ever new heights over on Spotify. So don't forget to give us a 5-star rating. And ComicLab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/ComicLab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/ComicLab. Well, Brad, no joke. If these BeReals are any indication, if I had to use these for Tinder profiles, there is not. I'm not kidding. It's not one, not two. It's triple chins based on the angle of this terrible BeReal that I just took. I would move no product off the shelves with this photo of me. This is not attractive.
You are not getting smooches at all, and unless Ollie is on BeReal.
That's right. My dog.
That's right.